Hello there, benefit sponges and other people. How you doing? Yes, I'm here. I'm back. I'm sort of almost back into a normal state of affairs, of things. This is kind of my new place. It's very nice. Well, it's not that new, to be honest. My girlfriend's been living here for a long time. So, yeah, I've just sort of moved in, which is why it's all really nice. It's very much, I feel like I'm the Borg. I've just turned up and covered everything in wires a little bit, but not too much. This isn't really my office, to be honest. This is the front room, so it's kind of very temporary. I still don't have a desk. So at the moment I'm using a little table. I'm right up against a window, which is good. Because it means natural light on my face, makes me look a bit blue. It's quite a miserable day out there today, but you know, you can't have everything. Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. If you've seen last week's video, you'll have seen the room that will be my studio, but for now, I will be here. And I'm just sorting out really boring things like getting the internet working properly. That stuff takes longer than you'd think. Tweaking with routers, etc. Getting my tech all sorted out. But it's going well. It's been a good week, actually. I've been really busy with Shut Up and Sit Down this week. We've been finishing off the Gold Club's stuff because we had some major changes to the Gold Club thing in terms of the designing, because I do all the design for the newsletter and stuff. It's great fun. It's basically like designing a magazine. But we've just finished putting them together and sending them out, so that's great because it means it's been a really busy few weeks because I've been moving house and I've been doing the Gold Club, but now that's all done, and I feel like today is the first day where I can kind of slightly relax. And I feel really weird, actually. I feel really tired and really kind of like wiped out. I was like, yeah, I can get on with stuff today, but then I'm actually like, oh, I'm tired. So I'm looking forward to hopefully a weekend of playing games, actually. I'm looking forward to today. I think I'm going to play some more XCOM and get some more of them in the bag. And then tomorrow and the weekend, I'm going to just try and finish Dark Souls so I can actually start making that video. Although one thing I am going to try and do this week, possibly today or tomorrow, is I really want to get this FTL Primer video done. This sort of a video I've talked about of explaining what FTL is about, why it's good for people, so that when I actually make my video about me being on my spaceship, hopefully everyone here will have some sort of context for that. Also, I'd like to make a little short video about So You're Being Hunted, but we'll see how I get on. And basically just, yeah. I'm in the process now. I'm in a weird zone. Actually, something I talked about on the Daft Souls podcast this week, which went up today, actually, unusually. Sorry if that confuses you, but it does go up at different times. Basically, it goes up when it's done, whenever that will be. But I kind of felt like in the initial rush of being like, oh, I need to do stuff. I've done all these weekly series things. I've started all these weekly series, and now it's like the podcast, Daft Souls is the podcast. Oh, my brain is screwed today. Daft Souls, the XCOM video, and the Dark Souls 2 diaries. And it's like, with those three things, plus the kind of day for Shut Up and Sit Down, plus the escapist Game of Thrones stuff I'm doing, it's like, oh, God, I've used up all of my time. So I think that once those videos are all done, once those series are all finished, I need to be quite careful about how I use my time. So I'm going to think very carefully about that. But I think that the immediate answer is actually I'm going to record quite a lot of the XCOM stuff in advance. So I might actually spend a couple of days just doing like months worth of the XCOM videos just to get them done, because then it means I can just focus completely on the stuff. And I realize I've actually not been very good at my own time management to a degree of being like, okay, well, it's Thursday, so I'll make this video, and then every week I'll make this video. And it's like, I don't need to do them like that. And while there are some advantages, especially with the XCOM stuff in terms of naming troops, I wanted to, at the start, definitely record them on a weekly basis just so I could react. But now things are flowing and now I've got a lot of troop names to use. I think I can kind of just roll with it. But we'll see. And the other main thing is it's like, I can't do a bloody Dark Souls 2 diary on Tuesday because I haven't played any. So I need to play a lot of that. And I just want to get it done and get the video made and move on. In terms of my overall thoughts of the game, which I think are already kind of brewed quite a lot, but I need to see it out and see the game out and get a little feel for New Game Plus, even though I might not play through the whole thing. So yeah, another week. It's crazy. I'm really looking forward to just being settled and being smoothed out. I mean, even now everything is done and the big push of the pressure is now out of the way. It still kind of lingers, you know? So yeah. Getting there. But on the up, what I am going to do this week is I'm going to get through the rest of the Sponger questions. I've gone through a couple of them. I've skipped out because they either weren't questions or they've been repeated, but I'm going to do all of them today. And what it means is that from Now on, the way it will work is every week when I post this video on the Patreon page, if you are a benefit sponger, you will be able to see that on the Patreon page and you'll get an update about it. And then ask your questions there, and I will answer questions every week from the thread from last week. That seems the best way to do it. Because, to be honest, I got an initial massive influx of questions I'm still working my way through, but I think now from now on it should probably be a bit less, and it should hopefully be a bit more controllable. But yeah, cheers for putting up with me, because it's horrible. I've been getting through, I'm answering questions that were asked in March. Thankfully, a lot of these questions aren't that time relevant, so it's fine. Anyway, first question from Andrew Jarvis. He says, hello Matt, now that you're effectively without any major publishing support, are you worried that without an editor's critical eye, you may generate content that is completely unfiltered or uncensored and that you may later regret? The implication being that the editorial policy and support improves content creation. If you don't agree with that, then maybe you can explain as to why. That's a good question. A little pro-journalist tip there. When people say that's a good question, it usually means that they want to have a think. In my case, it meant I wanted to have a drink. Right. These glasses are lovely. This is ridiculous, this place. My girlfriend's just got fantastic taste. She's bought they look like from Deus Ex. I don't think they're that expensive. They're just very nice. Everything here looks really nice. I feel like I shouldn't be here. It's ridiculous. Anyway, this one I think is a difficult one because I don't want to sound like I'm arrogant about this, but I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing now. And the thing is, when I was starting out without an editor's critical eye and without that filter process, my work wouldn't have been as good, and sometimes I would have got myself into trouble. But I mean, there's only two things you need as part of the filter process, really. Three things, actually. Let's be honest. The three things you need from an editor as a editorial is, one, somebody who's going to look at your work, tell you when it's bad. Just tell you when what you've done is not very good. And they're going to point out how to make things better, and they're going to be able to say, look, you don't know what you're doing here, get better at it. And when I was starting out, that was immensely useful. When I was a writer at OXM, I was actually not a very good writer when I started, but I had that hammered out of me quite successfully by John Hicks, who was my editor at OXM, who basically, and actually my co-workers, Edwin is fantastic, Edwin Evans Thirlwell, who still runs OXM's website, which I think is called Total Xbox, and John Blythe, just being around people who were very good at writing. So they could basically filter my work and say, this isn't good, this is bad writing, and be really brutal with my work and make me realize that actually I was taking lots of shortcuts and doing things that weren't very good in terms of sentence structuring. But yeah, that was really useful for a while. But then I kind of got to a point where it's like, well, actually, I've learned all of this now, having been taught by these people. Actually, I've developed my own good habits, and I don't do that stuff anymore. So that's not a problem. The second thing that you really need is, as you say, somebody to filter and censor your content sometimes, just because, things you may regret. And that's a tricky one because I can't say that I'll never do that again. There are moments where you, particularly when you're angry, you'll often react to things in a way which might not always be smart. And you may well be a bit too hasty with things. But I mean, sometimes having an editor prevents that. And sometimes having an editor can sort that out. I think I'm at a stage now where I do think about things, and I get a little feeling in my stomach. I'm like, if I feel like I might regret something, I usually know, and I usually hold off because it's, I don't know, I can tell now when I'm about to do it. I still do it more often than not now when I do things that I really regret. It's just on Twitter because it's so easy to just say something and press enter and have it out into the wild. And I don't like doing that, but I do it because I guess I'm human and we always mess up. That's the way it is. I like to think that I'm getting better as I get older at not doing things that I regret and doing less frequently, but I still do it and I will still do it in the future. And to try and pretend otherwise would be arrogant and stupid. Having said that, with work-wise, I think I'm quite good at knowing how to judge things and knowing when something's a bad idea and knowing how to do things in a way that is careful and knowing how to do things in a way which is not going to result in trouble. Having said that, I've made mistakes with that in the past as well. There was a situation when I was at Video Gamer where I made a video about Killer is Dead that I would still defend. I was making fun of it with tone. And I was also making a point about the fact that I think this sort of thing in games and this sort of nature of stuff is, it's not like the worst thing in the world, but I definitely think it's not the sort of thing that we should celebrate and defend as being auteurism, an auteur thing of being like, oh, well, they're an artist. So it's like, well, are they an artist? I mean, and the problem with that is that comes down to perspective, and that comes down to like what you think art is, and like, that's fine. I mean, it's not a case of being cut and dry here. It's just, in my opinion, it's not, he doesn't produce work which I think is art. I think he's a bit of a charlatan, really. But that's a personal perspective, and obviously I'm not saying that it isn't art. I'm just saying in my opinion, it isn't. But that's fine. But I made a mistake there in the fact that I trusted a piece of opinion. Now, I trusted something to be a fact based on a colleague of mine telling me it, and then it turned out that actually they got it wrong, and that was a mistake on my part because it was a tiny point to do with the money thing. One of the objects in the game you could give them was my colleague had told me that you could give them money when actually it was a ceremonial coin. And that's that's different. And that was a mistake that I'd made in the video, and it's because I'd basically taken something that a colleague of mine had written as fact, and that was a mistake on my part, and I realised that. It's quite annoying, but what can you do? I mean, it's just basically taught me to make sure that actually whenever I'm doing things, I completely check my own facts, and that's something that again, it's a point, I guess, is that it's something I was massively taught to do when I worked in magazines, because you have to, if you're putting something in print, you have to be sure. And so you double, triple check everything, if you're good at what you do anyway. And that was maybe a habit that I slipped out of, which was bad. And I guess the third thing with editorial policy is just that the third thing that you need for editing as part of this process is having people who are going to make sure that the content you produce is aligned with the brand of the website. And obviously that's something I don't really worry about anymore, because I feel like it's not a concern of mine anymore for obvious reasons. I don't feel like I have to produce certain things in order to fit with the tone of any outlet anymore. And I think that's good, because I think often outlets can avoid having conversations about things that they should be having conversations about because they feel it's not part of their remit, or they feel it's not part of their responsibility. And I think that's why often, especially when it comes down to there being controversial things within the industry to do with corruption or dishonesty, often you won't see many traditional games websites talking about that. They will tend to avoid it because they'll feel it's not part of their remit. And often you'll have writers at those publications who do want to write about it. But at the end of the day, editors, for wrong or right, I'm not saying it's wrong, will decide that really it's not their remit to report on that stuff, and it's not something their readers would be interested in. And I mean, I can't really have an opinion on that as, carte blanche, because that encompasses a very wide number of outlets and a very wide number of remits. So I think basically I'm not really worried about, the main reason I'm not worried about not having an editor, not having an editor's critical eye, is because of the fact that I've not had that for a while. There were points when I was working at Video Gamer where if I knew I was going to be covering a topic that I felt would be controversial, or I felt may be something that could possibly backfire or be something that people might regret, I would always sit down and talk to my bosses about it and say, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it. And I'd always be quite confident that I was doing it in the right way, even though sometimes maybe as I've said, I did sort of slip up with things, maybe let a bit too much rage slip out and things. I enjoy a bit of rage, but sometimes you've got to be a bit careful with that stuff. It's good to be angry, but it's better to be focused and miffed. But no, I mean, I'd always talk these things through and I'd always double check these things. But largely the work I would produce the work I produced at Video Gamer, I just made and put online. And nobody ever watched my videos before they went online, really, unless I specifically said, like, look, this could be trouble, I want you to watch it. And sometimes people would say, yeah, Matt, take this bit out. And I go, fair enough. But that's mainly just having a second pair of eyes. I don't really think of it as being editorial policy, really. It was more like, I need somebody else to check this. And luckily I've still got that. It's just I don't have it from a boss. I have a network of really good friends who really know their stuff to do with different things. And so if I'm covering certain topics, I will often get people to have a look at things and be like, can you just make sure I'm not doing something bad here? I've got some friends in particular who, like, my friend John Blythe, Log, he's very good at, like, kind of, because he's covered this stuff in the past as well on the OXM Breakdown, which is something that I helped him out. And it's fantastic, actually. You should watch the OXM Breakdown. There's not a huge amount of them, and it's a shame they weren't more regular than I wanted them to be. But there's some really good stuff on there. But actually, because of one of the things he did to do with gender, he actually spent a lot of time talking to people and making sure he was doing it right. And so he's somebody that I rely on a lot sometimes when I feel like if I'm going to talk about a topic where I feel like maybe it's not my place to talk about it, I do check things with him because, yeah, it is easy to mess things up. But I think that personally, I feel like I've spent enough time working under good editors that I have a very strong idea of when I shouldn't be doing things and when I shouldn't be creating things that I would regret. And I think that I'm also, because I've made enough mistakes in my life, I feel like when I get that certain feeling in my belly, I know that it's wise to maybe get a couple of people I know to watch it first and check that I'm not making a mistake. And the thing is, the feeling I get is not a worry, it's a righteous, fiery, fuck you, When I'm in that mode, when I'm like, I'm going to put this online, fuck you, I'm going to fucking do this. Whenever I'm angry or whenever I'm like riled up, and whenever I really want to just set something live because I just want to watch the world burn, that's the point at which I literally have to kind of go rein myself in and go, dude, and I still get it wrong, and I still would get it wrong. But yeah, I think generally speaking, editors are important. Editors are important if you're not experienced with the content in terms of like what you should and shouldn't be doing and what might be bad to do, and also very good in terms of just like knowing how to do your job properly. I think a lot of writers, when they start out, a lot of writers think they're great and most aren't. I was a crap writer, and I think actually having that help. I think my video work is pretty good though, and actually there are a few people who I think I trust their opinions and when I need the help, but I kind of feel like I don't really feel like my videos need quality control, and I feel like I don't need ethical control either, but when I do, I reach out for it. Having said that, I'll probably fuck something up in the future and just completely go back on all of this. Anyway, the last thing you need, of course, actually very important for editors, is legal knowledge. And this is the main thing, actually, is to make sure that you don't get yourself into legal trouble, because a lot of people do not know the laws. However, I do know the laws because I've been involved in way more mild legal threats and bollocks in the past couple of years than anyone would ever want to. So yeah, I'm actually painfully aware of legal issues. So I'm not worried about that either. I kind of know what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm not saying that I'm like the exception to the rule and the only exception. I think there are lots of people out there who are very good at policing their own work and all that stuff. But yeah, I feel confident with that. I don't think I would have been able to do it 2 years ago, but I think I could do it now. Good Lord, that was a long answer. I was trying to get through all these questions and I've just spent ages on that. But it's a good question. It's a good question. Right, I'm going to jump ahead. Simon James says, have you played the Yaug on Steam? I haven't. I've heard wonderful things about it. I'd like to play it at some point, especially because he says it's great with a group, especially for the storyteller to put silly voices on. That sounds like I should be checking that out. So I will try and do that when I get a chance. Connor Cameron asks, what are your views and opinions on the way some people act on the internet, especially gamers/online gamers? I'm not pointing any fingers, but the younger audience seem to have no respect for anyone anymore and seem very closed-minded. To be honest, I think that's always been the way. I think young teenagers have always had no respect and been quite rude, and I think it's just part of growing up for some people. But I'm not really worried about it. I think the problem at the moment is we have the commenting, the system we have of basically having content and comments gives a lot more weight to these people than they should have, and makes it look as if the groups of people who are often speaking loudly on the internet are bigger than they are. I think it's important to remember that actually the majority of people don't write comments, and they don't write comments for a variety of reasons, but largely I think a lot of the reason that people don't write comments is because they don't like the comments that are there. Like, you just sort of think, why would I want to walk into this house? It's full of people shitting on the floor, I just realised I'm like incredibly overexposed. I look like a bloody ghost. I'm just going to tap that down on a... That's better. I'm not a ghost anymore, thankfully. Good Lord. Yes. So I don't really worry about it, to be honest. I kind of make fun of it. It's funny. I mean, especially with like some of the comments I got on my escapist videos about Game of Thrones. It's just like, ugh. I comment about it on Twitter, but it's like, I think a lot of people think I get like wound up by it. I don't really. It's more that I just find them hilarious. I'm just like, who the fuck are you kids? Like, I don't know. It's just like the epitome of like, oh, this isn't very good. Oh. It's like it's a critical science. Like, last week's one was funny, but this week's one isn't funny. It's like, good, thanks for that. A, humor's subjective, and B, That's just the way it works. You can't have everything being the funniest one. You can't have every episode being the funniest one. Some are going to be funnier than others. It's just the way it works. Anyway, it just makes me laugh. But I basically think that it's a thing that the internet is not full of arseholes. The internet appears to be full of arseholes, but it's not. There's just actually a very small number of very vocal ones. And they just happen to be the people who spend a lot of time on the internet, talking on the internet, and writing on the internet. But yeah, they'll grow up. You know, like we were all arseholes when we were kids in different ways. That's just one particular breed of arsehole. And they'll turn into probably quite normal people who, when they're in their late 20s, will sort of be very embarrassed about the way they used to behave on the internet and not tell anyone that they behave like that, apart from maybe good friends, and go, oh, I used to be terrible. I used to be an awful kid. I think it'd be fine. And obviously there are a lot of close-minded people as well, but I don't know, it'd be fine. I just think that, you know, I think a lot of it is down to the comments culture, and comments culture is something that has been given too much power because of the advertising model of websites, of being like, well, you know, a comment is 3 clicks. You know, you get a click on the page, you get a click to write the comment, you get a click to look at the page again with the comments, and then you might get loads more clicks when they get into an argument. So actually, it's been good for the advertising model for a long time to have comments, just because it's more views, and by empowering people with the sense that it's really important that you share your opinions. God, I'm turning into a ghost again. This is crazy. They can be like, oh no, you know, it's important. Your views are important, and it's like, well. I mean, I'm not saying that people's views aren't important. I'm just saying that maybe that's not the best way to share them, and it's not the best way to have a conversation. And it's really difficult to work out alternatives. But I actually really like what Midnight Resistance do. I think Midnight Resistance is a really good site. I don't listen to the podcast that often because it's very long, and I don't really have time to spend that long listening to podcasts. But I love the stuff on their site, and I love the way they don't have comments, purely because it's like, well, if you want to discuss this piece, we'd love that. We want you to discuss this piece, but like, you don't need to discuss it here. You know, there's not a lot of value to be had in two people who don't know each other going, I disagree with this. Well, I disagree with you. Like, that's not an interesting conversation. So they basically encourage you to be like, you know, seek out people and talk to them about it, you know, show it to your friend, and then have a conversation about it. You know, it doesn't, and, you know, I think sometimes the difficulty with that is people will say, well, you know, some people don't know anyone who to have those conversations with. They don't know anyone in the real world. But it's like, come on, you must know someone who likes video games. It's 21st century now. Like, everybody plays video games a bit. You will know somebody who likes video games. Maybe they won't be the same video games as you, but, you know, maybe that you can have an interesting conversation with them. So I don't know. I mean, I feel mixed ways about comments. In the past, I've been tempted to just switch off all my comments on YouTube, just because. I mean, why? It's kind of like, I mean, it's all right because at the moment I'm small enough that the conversations that are had below my YouTube videos are actually quite nice. But I know that if I get any bigger, for whatever reason, it just won't be. And I sort of think, well, why do you have to have a conversation here? If people really want to actually talk about the work and talk about then you can do that. You can do that in a variety of places. Maybe it doesn't have to be right here. Because I think that immediacy does often breed the wrong type of people and the wrong type of comments. When I think if people really want to have a conversation about something, then they will have a conversation about it elsewhere. But if people just want to be dicks, then they'll just do it there. And actually, if you force them to go slightly further away, then they won't. And I mean, it's like I actually switched off the comments on my feminism video on YouTube, mainly because of the fact that, not because it was bothering me. I wasn't reading it because I was like, you guys are fucking idiots. It was just this chain of MRA muppets who were just blathering to themselves about how actually the world was equally hard. I was like, oh, you are like, I understand that you think you're putting together logical arguments, but you are basically idiots. But it was upsetting people who were watching the video and liked the video. It was upsetting people who just nice people who maybe aren't as steeled as I am to just ignoring comments. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that nice people were reading the comments and then getting upset by it. So I just thought, I'm going to switch them off. And it was interesting to see that as soon as I switched the comments off on that, and I kind of did it as an experiment for this, I sort of wondered what might happen. And I thought, well, either nothing will happen, or people will watch that video, get really annoyed at it and be like, oh, you know, you're some pussy whipped prick or whatever, and then feel the need to track me down another way, like maybe just find me on Twitter, or go onto one of my YouTube pages, or go into my main YouTube page and leave a comment there. And so far, instead of having a regular flow of these comments from MRI nutbags, MRI, you know what I mean, Nothing's happened. They've just they can't be bothered, it seems. So I kind of feel like the whole comment system is it's wrong for that. In fact, if people want to have meaningful conversation, they will go out of their way to do that. However, if people just want to shit on something, then if it requires them to put in a bit more work, the vast majority of people just won't. They'll just be like, I don't like this, and they'll just wander off. God, I look like another ghost. I look like a ghost again. This is bloody ghost day. Grey days, grey days. Right, Chris, he's just called Chris apparently, says, have you seen the Assassin's Creed Unity teaser? They claim it's not pre-rendered. Do you suppose it's just running the PC build and it won't look as snazzy on consoles? Or do you suppose we're in for a Colonial Marine style bait and switch type scenario again? I don't know. I don't think Assassin's Creed would, I don't think they'd do that. The whole pre-render thing is difficult. I don't think we get a bait and switch from Ubisoft. I don't think they're that daft. I think games do often look different because they do optimize what they look like for reveals. They always do. But I mean, games are going to look really nice. I don't think it's a bait and switch. I think the thing with Colonial Marines that was so bad was the fact that it was the animations for the aliens were just so good in the original track. I mean, the lighting engines and all the other stuff was a real downgrade as well. But it was more that the way they'd animated those aliens was spectacular, and it was like I kind of thought at the time, how the fuck have they done that? And obviously the answer was they haven't. Like they've done that animation for the video, and then when it came to actually animating the aliens in a dynamic way, they hadn't done it. Because to be honest, that's the hardest thing about aliens specifically, getting that thing to move. It's actually like it was never designed to move. The Geiger design was designed to be there in poses. This sort of weird, unwieldy thing. It doesn't really make sense, and that's one of the reasons it's frightening. But as soon as you try and have them moving around in any consistent way, it doesn't really work. And yeah, that's kind of what happened with that game, amongst many other things. And Randy Pitchford's a fucking prick. He really is. I mean, I used to say he's just a dick. Like the fact that now I think he was saying about how, oh yeah, like it's just because press were expecting perfection from Colonial Marines. It's like, no, people were expecting a game that wasn't complete shit, mate. He's gone beyond being like a bit of a fibber and just being like a shit. He's not a good guy. Like, I mean, you can't just keep lying again and again and again and expect people to have any kind of respect for you. It's just bollocks. Darren Russell simply mentions the fact that I mentioned 15 Stories High in the last podcast, which must have been a while ago. And he says it's a great show and he's glad that other people know about it. Yes, it is a great show. You should watch 15 Stories High. It's an amazing comedy show. It's quite hard to track down, but it's bloody brilliant. Justin Ross says he's been inspired by the stuff I've been doing to get more creative, so he's working on a dinosaur-themed horror game with some friends. That sounds very cool. I mean, he says that, but then also he basically asks me about what are my opinions on indie developers taking charge with horror games, because AAA horror games have sort of like, well, they don't really exist properly in a way that's good anymore. And I don't know. The thing is, like, he obviously makes the point of saying, aside from all the numerous Slender Man clones, I don't know, I'm not good with horror games. I've never played many horror games. I get frightened by things very easily. I don't like them. I'm one of those people who genuinely... I've been playing So You're Being Hunted, and I find that very frightening. So that's like as much as I go. I did play a bit of Amnesia, because I had to, for, I think, One Life Left radio show. And... yeah, I just think I don't like them. I kind of do like them and I don't like them. I guess it's like eating spicy food. It makes me feel really uncomfortable and really uneasy, and there's something about that that's quite exciting and quite fun, but I don't know. Largely, I'm just like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to play scary games. So I'm not the right person to ask about that. I get genuinely frightened by frightening games. Sorry. Jordan introduces his question by saying, I know I'm a prick, which is fair enough, Jordan, but he's asking two questions. First of all, he says he's asked about remakes and re-releases before, but what's your opinion on Last of Us for PS4? That's simple. That is simple. And he says, I disagree with this. He says, I understand Tomb Raider Definitive Edition because Square Enix didn't hit their sales target, so it makes sense to bosh a shiny new version, but The Last of Us sold ridiculously well. So they're assuming the fans are going to buy a second copy. I disagree with that. I think they probably sold about the same, in fact. I don't know the exact figures, but the problem with Tomb Raider wasn't that it didn't sell well. It was that Square Enix's internal expectations of that game were fucking stupid. Like, they wanted it to sell 10 million copies, and it's just like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, the console gaming isn't, no. Like, it was an estimate based on nothing. I mean, I don't know what it was based on, but it was an estimate based on stuff that was irrelevant now. And they just got their numbers wrong. They just fudged their numbers completely. And it's like, no. But The Last of Us sold well, but I don't know how well it sold. I mean, being just on PlayStation 3 can't have done it that well. I think it sold quite well. But I don't think The Last of Us sold nearly as well as it should have done, in my mind. It's one of my favourite games of the past sort of 5 years. So I'm actually really happy that they've done a definitive, like an HD new edition or whatever, remake of The Last of Us for PS4, mainly because of the fact that it's like, I don't think enough people played The Last of Us because it was just on the PS3. And it came out right at the end of a cycle. So lots of people were kind of going, is it worth me buying a PS3 just to play this? And I kind of, at the time, when people asked me that, I said no, because I reckon it will come out on PS4 as well. And it has. And I'm glad it has, because it's one of those games that, there are quite a few of them actually from last generation on the Xbox and the PS3 that are games that are amazing, that are just like, are coming out around now. And it's like, loads of people aren't ever going to play these games because, or lots of games are just going to get lost because they're not on anything else. Anything that's not on PC is like, oh shit, that's going to become a bit of a relic, you know? It's like, I was going through my games recently, I chucked away all of my plastic boxes and just put them in a big folder. And found my copy of Red Dead Redemption, and it's like, shit, yeah, like, I need to keep my 360 so I can, if I ever want to play Red Dead Redemption again, I have to have a 360. Just because they haven't released it on PC, which means it seems to be unlikely that, I don't know, actually, that is the sort of game they might do a new version, a new HD version of for the new consoles. Just because they did do it with Bully, I guess, back in the day. I don't know, but yeah, it would have been a great shame, I think, if The Last of Us had just remained a PlayStation 3 game forever, because loads of people haven't played it and wouldn't play it. It would just be one of those games people go, oh yeah, I heard that was great, but I didn't have a PS3, so yeah. So having it out now with shinier graphics, I think it's great. I mean, I wouldn't expect anyone who's already played it to buy it again, unless you're like a nutty fan, but loads of people haven't played it, so it's great. It means people who've got a PlayStation 4 can play it, and I might get a PlayStation 4 at some point. Not quite yet. I mean, they've actually removed the option, so you can record HDMI properly through games. They've just had an update for the PS4, so I might get one soon now, actually, just because up until then it's like, well, no, I'm not going to get one because I can't use one to do my job, so fuck off. And there aren't enough good games for it. I mean, there are lots of good games for it, actually, but they're all on the PC as well at the moment, so I'll just play them on the PC. No. Nick asks an interesting question here. Actually, a second question from Jordan, I'll just quickly go for. He talks about me talking about ASMR and regular features, and ASMR is like kind of weirdly audio sensitive memory. I can't remember, but it's to do with like people whispering and it making your head feel nice. And it doesn't affect everyone, but it affects some people. I can't remember which episode of regular features we talked about ASMR in, but it is a fascinating phenomenon. He asks me how much I use it. I don't use it that much, actually. I'm affected by it a little bit, but I'm not affected by it a huge amount. But I know a lot of people. I think actually Jim Trinker, who's the guy who took my job at Video Game. He took my job! No, he's great. He's really into it, I think. He uses it to go to sleep. It's kind of a nice thing to just be like, make you feel relaxed. It's pretty cool. It's pretty weird. But as Jordan points out, it's maybe a bit hard to explain that to your girlfriend. Why are you watching videos of a girl whispering before you go to bed? It's like, oh, it's weird. I can't explain it. Nick asks, though, this is a good question. He says, given that there were 9 iterations of the Xbox 360 and 6 iterations of the PS3, I don't know if that's true or not. That makes sense, I guess, in terms of tech, actual, like, fiddly tech iterations. Is it worth holding off from a next-gen purchase until updates / fixed hardware variants are released? That's a good question. I don't know. This is a really tough one, right? Because there are 2 ways this can go, right? You can have hardware that's kind of a bit shit and then gets better. So you get like the new version, the new iteration, which is fixed. And you can have hardware which will actually get worse. Now, traditionally speaking, it's really hard to predict this one, right? Because what tends to happen is, in my mind, is that the earliest versions of tech tend to be a bit ropey. And then they make a slight different one, which is just basically tweaking bits of the innards, but the actual console looks the same. And often those end up being the good ones because they've actually kind of ironed out any of the technical problems which were causing failures or anything like that. And then it gets to the slim editions, and I've been burnt by slims way too many times. Like I always think, oh, it looks lovely, it's really cool, and I get sold on the aesthetics and the slightly nicer look, and then get a really inferior piece of hardware. I mean, the Xbox 360 Slim, it's good because it's quieter, to be honest. I mean, like, the originals were really loud, but it's got major problems. Like the little cool pop-in hard drives that they put in the Xbox 360 Slims, they look lovely, but they've got a really nasty fail rate. I've had 2 of them die on me. And just generally, I get the sense that the Xbox 360 Slim is like slightly less well-made and less like sturdy than the kind of, not the original Xbox 360, obviously, but after they kind of fixed them and made them a bit more reliable, I think that they were actually better. So it's really hard to know when to buy. I mean, to be honest, at this stage, I'd kind of be tempted to get the PS4 that's out now, just because there haven't been a huge number of problems with it. And that's kind of probably a good sign, because as it goes on, when you get the slim versions, usually what they're doing is they're using kind of, because hardware's got cheaper, they're making them cheaper and reducing the price of the console, but also reducing the overheads of the cost of making them, etc., etc. It's like, I want to get a PS Vita. I don't want to get the PS Vita Slim because they're using a less good screen, and then it's like I'm waiting for that sweet spot when they're really trying to phase out the old PS Vitas, and then I'm going to try and pick one up for a good price, because often that's the way to do it. Because I think, just from personal experience, I find that actually the often like chunkier original versions of the console tend to last longer, tend to be a bit more reliable. And I think these days, a lot of the problems, if they're not really just melting and stuff, I think a lot of the problems you have tend to be fixable by patches, etc. And I'm on to the final question of the old school Q&A. My God, exciting. Paul Flanahan, it's a good name. He says, how much are you looking forward to shooting the fantastic Charlie Brooker in the face in Sniper Elite 3? I tell you what, I probably won't be shooting him in the face, because I think the Sniper Elite games are a bit crap. And but I was very happy to see that he's a character that you can shoot in the face in Sniper Elite 3, just because I know how much he genuinely loves those games. Yeah. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time with him when I was working on the TV show, and we talked about a lot of games and got off track quite a lot, because that's one thing admittedly that Brooker turns out he's very good at, is going completely off topic and just have it going off and talking about all sorts of mad shit, which is amazing. It's not always brilliant for actually getting stuff done, but for kind of going on fascinating directions and talking about really interesting things, it's brilliant. But he's got a real love for the sniper games. He just loves it. And he's aware. It's wonderful because he's aware that he's like, is there something wrong with me? Like, we were actually talking at one point about maybe having, I don't know, like we were talking about a bunch of stuff, maybe actually having like a bit where you could briefly try and find out if there was, he's like him talking to a psychologist of being like, is there something wrong with me? Like that I like shooting people with sniper rifles so much. I can't remember if we were talking about doing that for the show or not, so don't quote me on it. But yeah, we were definitely having a conversation about it, and I was actually, when I saw that news, it made me smile a lot, just because it's like, I don't think the Sniper Elite games are that much fun, but he loves sniping rifles so much that it's just like, yeah, I know that's the sort of thing that he will be thrilled with. That he'll be so happy, which is nice. And yeah, that's the end of this week's Q&A update video / podcast. If you're listening to it on the podcast, hello podcast person, I'm talking into your ear, right into your ear. Hello. I was moving creepy. Look at us video people laughing at the podcast people down there in the podcast. Having a joke at their expense. Sorry, I love you just as much. Anyway, join me next week for a new Q&A. And as I said, if you do want to ask questions for next week's Q&A, put them in the comments for this on the Patreon page. If you can't view the Patreon page, it's because you're not a benefit sponger, so you don't get to ask questions. Sorry, that's just the way the world works. Well, it's not the way the world works, it's the way this works specifically. Anyway, I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you next week when hopefully things should be back on track and I'll start doing good video things and it will be good. Happy days! Bye!